Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are in Jeremiah chapter 30. And this chapter is kind of a mixed prophecy. I'm going to get right in it because there is a famous phrase in this chapter called Jacob's trouble. Now, that's important to prophecy as well because, um, uh, well, let's get into it because I think it is um, this prophecy. Where you at here? Oh, here you go. So, when he talks about uh, again, remember prophecy has what's called a near fulfillment as well as a far fulfillment. And we're going to see kind of both in this chapter here. All right. So he says, "This is the word of the Lord. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Write down on a scroll all the words that I've spoken to you, for the days are certainly coming. This is the Lord's declaration when I will restore the fortunes of my people, Israel and Judah. The Lord's declaration, I will restore them to the excuse me. I will restore them to the land I gave to their ancestors, and they will possess it." So remember, in the midst of this prophecy, they are going through tribulation, judgment. In other words, Israel is dying. Jerusalem is dying, right? A torturous death. It is a hard time. So as he's speaking this, the judgments, the exiles is happening, the deportations, the destroying of the city. So now he's writing this prophecy in the midst of that he's going to restore their fortunes. Now, a couple of things here. What we're looking at is God's plan, his eternal plan, what he's always spoken about Israel. This is why it is troubling to me. You have some people who are saying that that the church replaced Israel, that God is through with Israel. They're not reading scripture. So notice what he says right here. For the days certainly are coming, this is the Lord's declaration, when I will restore the fortunes of my people, Israel. And then he says, I will restore them to the land I gave to their ancestors, and they will possess it. Now, so one, the land, I say this again, this did not happen in 1948. 47, I think it is. It did not happen. They did not get restored. Now, in prophecy, I think details are extremely important. So, in understanding prophecies, one, you should read all of the prophecies. And then two, we should pay attention to the details of the prophecy. So, 1948 could not have ever been a fulfillment of prophecy in any way. The land is not restored to them. All right. Verse 4 says, "These are the words the Lord spoke to Israel in Judah." Yes, this is what the Lord says. When we heard a cry of terror, a dread, there is no peace. Verse 7, "Ask and see whether a male can give birth. Why then do I see every man with his hand on his stomach like a woman in labor, and every face turn pale?" Kind of very interesting imagery here, right? A man giving birth. I believe there was a movie about this too. But notice this, the idea here is the harsh imagery that he's giving of the tough times that Israel is going to uh, go through. Now, look at verse 7. How awful a day, how awful a day, uh, how awful a day, how awful that day will be. There will be none like it. It will be a time of trouble for Jacob, but he will be delivered out of it. Now, this, I am using the Holman Christian Standard Bible, so let me do something quickly here. I'm looking here at a different translation. I'm going to see how it looks, read in the different translation. All right, let me do this. Because the only reason why I'm doing this is no, that's not what I want. Well, yeah, here. This is what I want. All right. I'm going to change the where is the New King James? I'm going to change translations here. How could I miss this? Oh, this is interesting. Let me go to the English Standard here. Okay, well, look at this. He says here, alas, the day is so great, there is none like it. It is the time of distress for Jacob, yet he shall be saved out of it. That's not what I wanted to read. I am looking for sort of the popular, where are you at, King James? Let's see, the King James, the Holy Bible, King James Version. Here we go, New King James. That's what I want. All right, look at this one. This is the New King James. Most of the times when I'm not reading the Holman Christian Standard translation, I am reading the King James, the New King James. I'm not going to get into Bible translations. I know that there are some groups of people that are what's called King James only, and we're talking the 1611. So I read that, for many, many, many years, right? King James. So, but I find the Holman Christian Standard more accurate and a better read. Next to it could be, I just told me to read the English version. That's okay. Okay. Anyway, this is the New King James. Excuse me. And so verse 7 says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it, and it is a time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Okay. And then he says, verse 8, for it shall come to pass in that day, says the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from your neck and will burst your bonds. Foreigners shall no more enslave them, but they shall serve the Lord their God and David their king, whom I will raise up for them. Now, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this verse here. I'll come back to this verse 9 in a moment. But so 7, when he says Jacob's trouble, that's the kind of point I wanted to focus on. Let me get back to the Holman Christian Standard Bible. And a lot of people know that as the Holman Christian. I mean, not the Holman. I mean but this time of period of Jacob's trouble. All right. So again, he says, how awful a day that will be. Now, what's the day? Now, he kind of go back and he says, ask and see whether man can give. No, well, look at verse 9. Back in verse 4, it says, these are the words the Lord spoke to Israel and Judah. Now notice it's Israel and Judah. And the reason why this is important is because, remember, Israel, the northern kingdom, they have been conquered for some 80 years already. They've been out of the picture. But notice the prophecy here to Israel and Judah. He said, yes, this is what the Lord says. We have heard a cry of terror, of dread. There is no peace. And then he goes on and says, ask and see whether a male can give birth. Why then do I see every man with his hand on his stomach like a woman in labor, and every face turned pale? In other words, grief, anger, anguish, deep anguish. And then he goes on and he says, how awful that day will be, and there will be none like it. It will be a time of trouble for Jacob, but he will be delivered out of it. Now, now, one of the interesting things about prophecy, as I said before, um, one of the things about prophecy, pay attention to the detail. So right now, they are already in the midst of a destruction because of their sin. Okay, because of their sin. Then, and as we move forward in Jeremiah, we're going to see other prophecies of God judging them for their sin. And as we are some 2,500 years in the future here, we're speaking looking back. So we could see that just in this case, there were so far 2 destructions. So you have the destruction of Jerusalem during this time, Nebuchadnezzar's time. And then there is the destruction of Jerusalem during, or in AD 70, Jesus talked about the temple being completely destroyed in Matthew 24. So when we kind of go back, we see, excuse me, this time of trouble here. He says how awful that day will be, and there will be none like it. It will be a time of Jacob's trouble. Now, this is yet a time to come, excuse me, and then notice the word, notice the words here. He says, it will be a time of Jacob's trouble, and he will be delivered out of it. So in AD 70, and because some people try to make this kind of prophecy the same or fulfilled. Now, in AD 70, they were not delivered out of this trouble. Now, I'm going to read one other verse of scripture here, and this is in Zechariah chapter 14. Now look at verse 1. He says, a day of the Lord is coming. So that term, day of the Lord, all right, always refers to wrath. Okay, so not blessings, but wrath. So whenever you see the phrase, the day of the Lord, wrath is coming. So when he says, but notice who he's talking about. A day of the Lord is coming when your plunder will be divided in your presence. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem for battle. So this is when we know, these thing here. All right, let me put my phone right here. Okay. Sorry about this. Spam calls. All right. All right. So, but it goes, so he says, I will gather all nations against Jerusalem for battle. Now, again, this did not happen in AD 70. I want you to be clear about that. Now, this prophecy, the book of Zechariah is post-exile. Now, remember we was reading in Jeremiah, so you can almost say a little over 70 years before is when Jeremiah was given his prophecy. Zechariah is post uh, exile. They went back. Okay, the 70 years up. A remnant of the people went back to Jerusalem during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. Restored the wall, restored the city. Okay, so this is something that's looking forward. Now, some people will say this happened in AD 70, but again, I always pay attention to the details. Verse 2, I will gather all nations against Jerusalem for battle. And then he says the city will be captured, the houses looted, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be removed from the city. Now, if you go back and read the historical accounts of AD 70, you can say, you can say, did this happen? All right. So then he says, then the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as he fights on the day of battle. So that's why I say we know this is not AD 70. The Lord did not go out and fight. Israel was not restored, and Israel was not saved. Now remember, back in verse 7 here, he says how awful a day, how awful that day will be. There will be none like it. It will be a time of trouble for Jacob, or we can say Israel, but he will be delivered out of it. So now he comes and he says, right? I'm going to read it again because I want us to get the full picture here. A day is coming when your plunder will be divided in your presence. So this is this time of trouble. I will gather all nations against Jerusalem for battle. The city will be captured, the houses looted, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be removed from the city. So this is a hard time. Look at this. Women will be raped, houses looted. Okay. Verse 3. Then the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as he fight on the day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east, and Mount Olives will be split in half, east to west, forming a huge valley, so that half of the mountains will be moved to the north and half to the south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for the valley of the mountains will extend to Azal. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah the king. Now we've saw this before, which is kind of interesting. And then he says, then the Lord my God will come and all of the holy ones with him. He goes on to give a little more detail about, again, this kind of the coming of the Lord. And then also, you can see as he's talking about the coming of the Lord, what is going to happen during a very specific time and what we call the tribulation period. But during this period of time when God is judging the earth, he's also judging Israel. It's going to be, as he said, a time of trouble for Jacob. So, and that's the prophecy in Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 30. We obviously will pick this up in the next study. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. All right, now see you in the next study.